Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel. So in this video, we're going to talk about all of the books that I read in October. In October, I was very ambitious and I only got around to reading 3 books. So I'm going to go over the books that I actually read in my rating and then the books that are now on my TBR because I didn't actually get to them. To start us off, the first book that I decided to read in October was My Killer Vacation by Tessa Bailey. I've never actually read a Tessa Bailey book before, but I know that she's extremely popular and she's in the romance genre, which is something that I love. So I had high expectations going into this one. To be honest, this book seemed like it was all about the spice and not really character development or any of that stuff that I love so much with my books, like The Love Hypothesis, where you really get to know the characters and it's a slow burn. This one just hit you right off the bat with spice, and I wasn't a huge fan of that, but I can understand if you love that kind of stuff, you would absolutely love this book. This book is about a teacher, which made me appreciate it even more. This teacher goes on vacation with her brother and spends a lot of her savings to afford this house. And while she's there, the first thing that she notices when they are in the rental home is that there's a dead body. A bounty hunter comes into town and he's trying to figure out what happened to this person. And that's what this whole story is about. It's kind of a murder mystery, but mainly spice. So this is about the love story between the bounty hunter and the teacher. So I ended up giving this book 3.5 out of 5 stars. I did love the ending. It is a very happy romance novel. So if you like endings like that, like I do, then you would love how this book ends. So I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. The second book that I read is a book that's kind of out of character for me. This book was called Fairy Tale by Stephen King. So it just came out. I wanted to read a full Stephen King book because I haven't yet. And this is something that I know is going to be adapted into a TV show or a movie, so I wanted to read it firsthand and see what I was going to get myself into. So this book follows a boy named Charlie Reed, and Charlie Reed has had a really tough childhood. He lost his mother really young, and then his dad really struggled when she passed away. So Charlie makes a deal with God where he says, if you can make my dad be like a normal dad and be more involved and get it together, then I'm going to strive to do good in life. And that happens. So Charlie makes this promise with God that he can't break, saying that he wants to do good for people around him. He has this neighbor named Mr. Bowditch, and Mr. Bowditch has this dog named Radar. So one day Charlie's out walking and Mr. Bowditch has fallen and hurt himself and he can't get up. And the reason that he knows is because he hears Radar barking. So he goes to follow Radar, and then he's able to report that this man has fallen and go help him. And he ends up being his caretaker because Mr. Bowditch is all alone at his house. All that he has is Radar. Mr. Bowditch gets to come home because Charlie promises that he will be his caretaker and watch him and make sure that he takes all of his medication and does all of his physical therapy type stuff. And Charlie's dad asks, are you sure you want to take this on? And Charlie feels kind of silly saying yes, because I made a promise with God that I was going to do good in life. So he ends up being really close to Mr. Bowditch. So Mr. Bowditch ends up passing away, and this doesn't really give much away. But before he passes away, he leaves a tape recording for Charlie to tell him about this secret world that he has found. And this is where the book really takes a turn because it's all extremely believable up until this point. So Mr. Bowditch tells him that he has this secret world that Charlie can go visit, and it has all these other people and all these things going on. He wants Charlie to go there. So Charlie goes one day and brings Radar. The whole reason Mr. Bowditch wants him to go is because Radar is starting to get sick and older, and in this magical world, this fairy tale, if you will, Charlie gets to go on a sundial that can make Radar younger. So Charlie goes and tries to save Radar in this other world. Now what Stephen King does that is super cool throughout this story is he relates all of the characters and everything that's happening to different fairy tales, and that's why it's called Fairy Tale. So he talks about how it's kind of like Alice in Wonderland going to this other land. He talks about how some characters remind him of Rumpelstiltskin. There's another character that reminds him of The Little Mermaid. So it's all these fairy tales combined into one story that's actually really dark and more like the original fairy tale, not the Disney fairy tales that we think of from our childhood. So Charlie goes down to this other world and finds out that a complete like takeover is happening and sees all the injustice that's happening, and he wants to go make it better, and he finds out he is the prince that they've all been waiting for to save them. That is the story of Fairy Tale without giving too much away. And I got so sucked into this book. I was so intrigued. I wanted to listen to it the whole time because I listened to it on audiobook. It was like 24 hours of listening, and I wanted to listen to the whole thing. I was so sucked in. I loved the style of writing, and I loved just everything about this other world. I started to get lost a little bit. There's a scene where Charlie goes to prison, which if you read the book, you'll find out about it while he's in this other land. And that's where I got lost because I felt like Stephen King did such a good job with the character development in this story. I learned all about Charlie Reed's history and his mom and his dad and Mr. Bowditch and Radar. But then as soon as we got to the prison scene, Stephen King introduced like 20 new characters. And I was like, wait, who is that? When did Charlie meet him? And all these new characters got introduced so quickly that I just kind of got lost. And I wasn't as into it as I was in the beginning. Overall, I loved the ending. I loved everything that Charlie did in this other land, and just hearing the relationship and symbolism of everything with other fairy tales. That was so fun for me. I loved this book. It was just that prison scene. I started to get like, okay, like let's get to the end of the story already, because I felt like it was just taking up a lot of time and not serving a lot of importance. And I was kind of ready for the book to be over. I loved the first half of this story, but the second half just felt like a lot was thrown at me and I couldn't really get to know the characters as well. So I ended up giving this book 4 stars out of 5 stars. The final book that I read is a book that I've actually been wanting to read for quite some time now, and that is The Ex-Hex by Erin Sterling. So this is a feel-good witchy story. The first line when you read what the story is about says never mix vodka and witchcraft, which that is just amazing. This story is about a girl named Vivian, and she is a witch. And this story is set up where witches live among normal people and they live in a college town. So Vivian and this boy Reese, they had a college fling where they liked each other, but Reese had an arranged marriage somewhere else. So she got so upset when they had to break up, and she put a spell on him as a joke. She was saying different silly things like girls aren't gonna be happy with you and your hair's not gonna look good anymore. And she did this all while she was venting with her cousin. Flashes forward 9 years later, and now Vivian is a professor at the college, but she loves to teach regular history to people who are not witches. And Reese is off living in Wales and decides to come back to represent his family for Halloween, because in this town his family is like royalty and the college is named after him. So he goes to represent them and he runs into Vivian. While he's there, he starts to notice that all of this bad magic is happening, and Vivian thinks that it's because of her curse that she put on him 9 years ago. It totally rekindles an old flame, and they spend a few days together trying to figure out why he's cursed and how to undo the curse. And they start to see that they never really stopped loving each other over the past 9 years. This book is one of the funniest books that I've ever read. I loved her style of writing. It was so much fun. Everything was so witty and fun and quick, and I loved the humor in this book. It was so fun to read. Just about every bookmark was something either incredibly sappy that really hit me in the heart, or incredibly funny. And I bookmarked so much. I highlighted even more in this book. It was just such a fun read. Everybody needs to go read it. The book is just so cute, and I gave this one 5 stars because I loved the humor and the sappiness in the story. And of course it had a happy ending for me, which I love. Now we need to get to all of the books that I didn't read, because there are quite a few. October flew by. I thought that I was gonna have so much time because it was fall break, but I actually just was out doing so much that I didn't really have much time to read. I have 3 books that I wanted to read and I never got to. So the first one is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. This was actually going to be the first book that I wanted to read in October, and it just didn't end up happening that way. I've owned this book for so long and I've just never gotten around to reading it. So this is definitely on my TBR now. So this book is about a girl who's looking into a murder that happened in her town for a final project in school, and she's re-examining all of the evidence and trying to solve the case because she thinks that it was solved incorrectly. So that's what this book is about, and one day I'll get around to reading it. The next book that I wanted to read was The Silent Patient. This is one that I feel like so many people have been talking about, and I've also wanted to read this one for a while, and I finally just pulled the trigger and bought the book. This book is about a woman who kills her husband, and she's stayed silent about it for 5 years, and now she's finally willing to talk to a psychotherapist and learn why she did what she did. This is just one that I always see as so highly rated, and I really want to get to reading this one too. Now, the last book that I didn't get to is The Kiss Curse by Erin Sterling. I just loved the ex-Hex so much that I really wanted to read another one of her books. And I saw that this one recently came out, so a lot of other people were reading it. And I'm so excited for this book because in the ex-Hex, we learn Vivian's story, and she talks with her cousin Gwen about everything. That's who she's with when she first casts the spell on Reese. This book is about Gwen's story. So I'm really excited to hear Gwen's story. I've already gotten to know her from the ex-Hex. This is the story between Wells and Gwen. So I'm really excited to read this one as well. I already know that Erin Sterling's gonna deliver with some witty, super funny, banter-filled, sappy book, and I can't wait to read this one. I have lots of other books on my TBR as well. I'm already starting off November by reading Layla by Colleen Hoover. I just feel like I need to get into the fall spirit and read some more creepier books. I love psychological thriller, that's my favorite genre, and so I'm really excited to see what all these books have to offer when it comes to that. So those were all the books that I read in October and the books that I didn't get to read in October, so that have moved over to my TBR shelf. Thank you guys so much for watching. I love sharing about what I'm reading. If you made it to the end of the video, thank you so much, and I will see you all on my next video. Bye guys.